Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on September 30th, 2023 at approximately 4:35 p.m. PST. Now I've returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the precise same tools I personally use in my day to day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide my life by. Now, most of these tools have been shared with literally thousands of other people with varying degrees of success, depending upon their own personal efforts. Now, with that in mind, I do apologize for cutting it so tight, but we'll see where things go. Did I look at that? I did. I remember to close the door behind me. This is a nice change. It has been, to say the least, a little on the hectic side. What do we got here? Oh, let us just hit refresh there, just on principle, see what happens. And there we are. Now, uh-oh. Okay, what do we got? Had to get that there. Christine, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You are in with the gold today. And Football Cat, you are in with silver. Okay. And then right behind we have Joe Stewart coming in with the bronze. Now I figured, I do apologize for yesterday. What ended up happening is I actually overbooked myself and had a meeting with the bank. That actually worked out rather well. Surprises, surprises. It worked in my favor this time, in one sense. Unfortunately, today has been, to say the least, a little hectic. Now, I figured we were supposed to deal with the Elfydd Race yesterday. Shadow, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You are in with honorable mention. And as you're also the first one through the gate that actually has a website that I'm aware of, this is the link to Shadow. Whoop, that didn't work. This is the link to Shadow's live stream. Well, that was definitely wrong. Screw that up in a hurry. This is the link to Shadow's live stream. So absolutely drop in, give him a listen. If you like what he has to say, give him a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of it. Okay, it's by joining together that we can change things around. And that we can actually put this society back on functional track. JCL, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I don't know what we're looking at yet, Christine, but 93 is plenty warm enough from my standpoint. I mean, I don't even know what I'm looking at. There it is. See what my temperature is looking at right now. If I do this and then I go over here, we can see it. It's really funny. We're sitting right now at 16, which is 327, 50. It's about 60 degrees, and I'm overheating. But later this week, we're only going to be in the 70s this week. Around about 20 on mine, 22 on Sunday is our hottest, which realistically is somewhere in the mid 70s as far as the States goes. Or Fahrenheit, anyway. Where are we here? iVoices, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I would not hold my breath on that. iVoices is just going, when are the elves going to come from underground and show themselves to humans en masse? Humans are not ready, frankly, for another race. Okay, they have enough trouble with their own color. Okay, with their own species, never mind anybody else's. Apparently, I punched a hole in my head. Um, and but that being said, some are already surfacing, and you can when you're looking at your half breeds, not hybrids. There's a very big difference. When you're looking at your half breeds, okay, there are a number of those I've already seen. Football is going, when you die and stay on Earth, it's the last thing you wore visible to the living. That depends on the individual, but many times the answer is yes, because it's easier for them to convert that than it is to come up with a new ensemble. They do in time football figure out how to actually do it and how to actually change outfits. But it's not something that automatically happens. You know, see, one of the reasons I decided, we're dealing with the paranormal today. Well, we were supposed to deal with it yesterday, but I overbooked my banking. Okay, so it got a little screwy. Tomorrow is a wonderful day. I've already overbooked myself. Things are changing rather rapidly, but I figured out where I'm heading. Now, people talk about which race was the first one on Earth. Well, the Elfydd race, as far as corporeals go, was the first race to hit Earth. Okay, okay, and it was literally built here. Now, the reality of it is they are still here. Okay, before I get into this, I saw somebody here. Timothyman, how you doing? Glad you could join us. When we take a look at the ancient races, okay, the Elfydd race was here way, way, way before mankind. And because of the way that the originals were actually constructed, the original Elfydd, and there aren't that many of them left, are literally, as far as Earth is concerned, as far as humans are concerned, they are literally immortal. Unless, of course, they die. And no, it is not a case you have to behead them. Okay, they just have to die by injury. No, they may die by illness, depending. Okay, but will they ever die of old age? No. This is why there's so few of them left. But in all fairness, they actually have figured out how to keep their lives going a little better than mankind has. Now, that race was originally built with one purpose, and that was just simply the starting point for what eventually not evolved into, but was co-created as the human race, for spirits to experience the corporeal world with limited senses, okay, and thereby experience what's going on. Now, the Elfydd race is number one. Okay, number one, they are very capable of using what humans would call true magic, what I simply call literally 0 point energy. And when you compare 0 point energy to true magic, you're looking at the same thing. It's also been observed that technology, when pushed to the ultimate level, there is little difference between technology and magic in the first place. So we are looking at a lot of variables here. But yes, the different now we'll start with all of the elves, the entire Elfydd race, starting off in one location. But because so many were there, and so many ended up having to be put together, okay, they ended up expanding and going to the four corners of the world. I voices. A war against the in with today's world. I voices is asking, how do you think humans would fare in a war against the elves? Well, talking about modern day, okay, modern day humans, on the whole, would be a write-off. because you got to understand. Okay, I'll finish that in just 10 seconds, so don't go away. Nathan, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And this here is the link to Nathan's show, to Nathan's live stream. And let's see, we pop that in here. So drop in, give him a listen, and absolutely, if you like what he has to say, give him a thumbs up, do subscribe to the channel, and share the daylights out of it. Now, on a quick note, Nathan, I will, I probably won't be in the chat room tonight for the first part, but I am going to do my best to get into the panel at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, we'll try English, Pacific. And whatever you do there, Nathan, make sure you keep your eyes on the road, much more important. Chad, how we doing? Glad you could join us. And let's see, and we know how this goes. This is the link to Chad's archives. Hopefully one day he'll get back into either streaming or posting. But in the meantime, drop in, give him a listen. If you like what he has to offer, do give him a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of the thing. Now, going back up here before I get myself lost in a nightmare. Our voices. Humans against the Elfydd Race. Humans don't have a prayer. They will make some successes, don't get me wrong, because humans do have some pretty skillsome technology. And they certainly have the guns and what have you. Problem is, guns only take out one at a time. Okay, bombs take out everybody, but take a lot to deliver them. Many of the Elfydd Race still access true magic, which means those neat little ideas of all of a sudden causing a fire to erupt just by pointing at a spot and muttering a few words. These guys are more than capable. Okay, now granted, only, and I'm just really ballparking it, maybe 1/10 of them can pull that off. Okay, but depending on which race you look at, bear in mind, Elfydd is really the species. Okay, they definitely prefer your old man, what humans call melee weapons. Okay, as in bows, swords, that sort of thing. But they have camouflage down to a fine art. So would it be a good idea to have a fight with them? Probably not. Okay, do understand these guys train from birth. Well, correction, they start training really when they get to be about 2 years old. Okay. Where are we? Nathan's asking, can the local elves that people are talking about, but you're talking about since our our intentions? Some of them, the answer is yes. And I will tell you, the ones that are most likely to deal with you, oddly enough, are literally what you would call the forest elves or the wood elves. Okay. They still won't come into your primary cities. But some of them can certainly sense. More to the point, they read body language phenomenally well. Now, the reality of it is, most of them do not speak a standard Terran tongue, as in English, French, German. Name the language. Most of them still speak ancient Elfid. Okay, which is a combination of sign language, nature sounds, and actual words. Okay, and if you think learning to speak Cherokee was rough for people. Try learning to speak ancient Elfid. Okay, no, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, it is an entertaining little issue, but they can certainly. When I say they can't discern intention, okay, not in as much as they do not see the future per se, but they're very good at reading people's actions. Okay, so we have a real big issue here of things changing, of things changing for the better. But the ancient Elfydd race, if they were to come to the surface, first rule of thumb, they're not going to come to the surface during daylight. They're just not going to. They see extremely well at night. Why put themselves in a position that stabilizes the ground? Because the ancient Elfydd race ended up, it wasn't they were born to war, which humans were. Well, more to the point, humans were built to war. Okay. Nathan, the answer is yes. Although it's really kind of comical because most of the Elfydd race are not interested in offering to them. Are they interested in peace? Certainly. The easiest way to get their attention on the whole is literally to treat Mother Nature, to treat the planet properly. They really don't care if you fight amongst yourselves. Football. You're asking, do gnomes draw in ancient races? Only in as much as they get along with most of them. But if you're asking, do they actually deliberately pull them? No. But gnomes are very well known for doing all sorts of odds and ends. Oh, okay. Oh, um, okay. I didn't get the whole thing there. It just showed up. Do they draw in ancient races? They will, in all likelihood, catch the attention of them. And you're referring to your ceramic gnomes that you put around, because people that put ceramic gnomes around, the Elfydd race has come to understand these people take a look. I'm not certain what that is, but that's okay. Unfortunately, Shadow, whatever you've typed there doesn't translate. So I can't give you an answer to that yet. But people that put ceramic gnomes around are very clearly focusing on the idea. Ah, there we are. Ah, okay. So we did have a typo hiccup. People that put ceramic gnomes, the Elfydd race has come to realize that is whether you're putting a ceramic gnome out, whether you're putting like for instance, a rock garden is another way to get their attention. In a manner of speaking, football. Okay, can ceramic gnomes come to life? Only in a manner of speaking. What happens, the gnomes themselves don't actually come to life. But some of the ancient races do know how to animate them, to make them move around, to make them rearrange themselves without the Elfids or the other races stepping on the property. They just have to be, well, I guess usually they have to step on the property. But quite often, just as a lark or just because they're not quite happy with the layout, they may have them rearrange themselves. But do understand, when you've got ceramic domes out, you are in essence protecting yourself as well. Philip, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You got to be on the other side of the planet there, Philip. 4:55 today is not Sunday, is it? Today shouldn't be Sunday. Sure, now you've got me questioning what day of the week I'm on. No, today's Saturday, so you got to be on the other side. Oh, okay, so you're not. And we're gonna have one of these wonderful technology days, are we? Raymond L, how you doing? Glad you can join your that you could join us. Yeah, glad you could join yourself too. That ought to be fun. Well, day consolation, Philip. I've been confusing myself all day. If I look at it, let's see, put that over there. Well, that was a near disaster. This morning, yeah, well, last night I ended up packing in at about 9 o'clock. So of course I woke up at 11:30, and then was up till 4:30 this morning. So I went to bed, grabbed a couple hours of sleep. I've been on the go since what, 7 o'clock this morning. Okay, and looks like I'm going to be a little on the hectic side. Oh, here we are. Joe's going, "Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. How can you tell if someone is following you in a car with your family and you don't know why?" Well, sad to say there, Joe, and this is not going to necessarily help a lot, but you can feel their intention. Okay. I am not one to be able to tell you how to tell if you're being tailed from a technological standpoint. Phil, I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but it literally boils down to reaching out with your senses and feeling the focus of their intention to tell whether you're being followed. Whether you're being followed because they're following you, or are they following you because they happen to be on the same road you're going down. Okay. Now, Philip, you have asked, can ceramic gnomes see through my eyes and hear through my ears? The answer is categorically no. Okay. A ceramic gnome is not a corporeal entity. It is a representation. It can be animated, but and some of the races will utilize the gnome to gain perspective to get the right angle on things. And the race on the other side of that viewpoint, if you will, is the one that sees, not the ceramic gnome itself. Okay. And again, so when we look at that, some of the gnomish races, some of the gnomish people can absolutely they absolutely will utilize a gnome as a transfer point to if you will spy on what people are doing, because they're watching to make sure that nature is taken care of. Okay, these are the underground, the original. Well, the Elfydd race was supposed to take care of Esau. Unfortunately, things went a little sideways. The gnomes, when they came into existence, took it to heart. Okay, and you will find gnomes living in the forest, living in the mountains. You might even find one or two living in your rock garden. Of course, if you find one or two living in the rock garden, then they do get along with the fairy with the fairy as well. Okay, but one thing is for certain: with all of these races we're talking about, well, more to the point, with the gnomes, most of the Elfydd races are not problematic. Now, I honestly have never heard of gnome squatch, but by the sound of that, you're talking about a half gnome, half Sasquatch. Okay, and that would have to be done either in a test tube or via magic. Okay, because physically speaking, they are not compatible. They're from a genetic standpoint, sure, technically they're compatible. From a physical standpoint, it's not going to happen. So, could you end up dealing with a hybrid? Certainly. Okay. Is it going to be a half breed? Not a prayer. This would be as bad as trying to have a natural half breed on an Enochian human. the size disparity is way too great. Okay, but when we look at the Elfydd race, a couple of things you got to realize. Okay, first and foremost, there were so many of them that were required because of the offer that was placed before the spirits that the Elfydd race spread out across the world. We have literally, much like you've got Caucasians, you've got Africans, you've got Middle Easterners, you've got Chinese, Japanese, same kind of an idea. With the Elfydd race, you have your dark elves, which live underground. By the way, they are referred to as dark elves because of one thing. Their primary focus is rather, shall we say, bleak. But you do have your wood elves, which are the ones that you're likely running into out when you're out looking for Sasquatch or gnomes or any of the fairy. Okay, and then you've got your desert elves. Again, the desert elephant, the sea elephant, and the list goes on. They each, much like humans, adapted to their new world. Okay, but aside from the dark elephant, most of them are, I wouldn't necessarily say tolerant of humans so much as not aggressive towards them. Didn't need that in front of me, it just confuses things. Now, yeah, I will tell you this. Especially when we start looking at options, and Philip has said he's heard about the gnome squatch. Well, here's the funny thing. A lot of people, and yes, some of you may well question where I get my information and how I'm any different than anybody else. I'm not about to try and figure that one out. I get it firsthand. What do we got here? I think Joe asked. Oh, there we are. Yeah. Philip is going, ask Walter Bosley, Joe. He was trained by the United States government to recognize anyone tailing him. Worked in the FBI during the Cold War, keeping an eye out and or ear on Soviet spies. Yeah, I am not the one to check. If I feel like I'm being watched, I have a tendency of just changing vibratory rates because I don't like being followed too terribly much. Although I do get lost very easily myself. That's an excellent idea, Shadow. Shadow, and this goes out to all of you people, whoever's listening at this point. Okay, Shadow has suggested if you think you're being followed, make 3 right turns, followed by 3 left turns. After the 3rd left turn, while driving, and have someone call 911 after the 3rd left turn. In this way, if they're still behind you, it's easy to figure out they're there. Now, to my way of thinking, this is excellent, and this is an excellent suggestion. But this is one of the things I really like about the people in this room. Somebody asks a question, and we can be absolutely certain that somebody in the room has a functional answer. The Elfydd race itself is very steeped in tradition. Okay, way more than what any of the human races are. Okay, like tradition is extremely important. So is proper etiquette, proper manners. So in answer to a question somebody's bound to come up on. Okay, yes, yeah, there is a way to get their attention by following proper etiquette, by following proper manners when dealing with, especially when dealing with nature. Okay, in other words, Let's say you're a farmer, for instance. Okay, just as an example, a farmer who goes out and thanks Esau, thanks nature, thanks Gaia, however you want to put it, thanks God for the bounty provided. Okay, this is a way that a human can give energy back to the healing process. That will certainly bode well in most of the Elfydd races perceptions. You know, the neat part about it, one of the things that I look at here, and I'm noticing there's this issue of, well, what if you're being tailed? I look at it this way. Let's assume you're being tailed right from the get-go. Okay. Yes, that means when you go home, somebody may know where you live. Take a look at the internet. Just about everybody already can find out where you live. They don't require the car anymore. Okay. But the Elfydd race is very, like, they are very live. It's not that they're weak, it's that they are wiry. Okay. And yeah, they absolutely, in a war, they brook no quarter. Okay. But they will target their people. They will not. They don't go on a mass, the idea of, oh, let's have a fireball to take out the enemy. They don't operate that way because it does too much damage to the very planet they live on. And they're really not interested in destroying it. Unfortunately, humans don't hold this kind of respect proper as well as we would like. Okay. But when you start looking at these people, yes, you are absolutely correct. They absolutely have pointed ears. And here's the kicker. And before somebody asks, just because somebody has pointed ears does not mean they are either Elfydd or part Elfydd. Okay. All it means is they've got pointed ears. For the Elfydd race, they were actually built with them because they hear better and can pinpoint sounds better. Okay, now, the neat part about that is some of the races have figured out how to manipulate the positioning of their ears based on simple muscle coordination. Okay, this is just one of the many things we're looking at. And yes, they are capable of phenomenal artwork, phenomenal music. Okay, they do tend to favor stringed and wind instruments and or singing, which, by the way, singing is a wind instrument. That is actually an excellent question there, Philip. And we're referring to wiry like a lightweight champion. Okay, not wiry like somebody that hasn't eaten enough. Yeah, and unfortunately, Joe, this is one of the drawbacks. Joe's just going, I thought that was the case today. Grocery shopping with my mom. The guy was with his girlfriend. I just stared. I got a paranoid feeling, but nothing happened. And this is why I caution you, be aware that paranoia, as in living in fear when you don't have a viable source for it, is not overly healthy for you. I am, however, glad to hear that nothing happened. Okay, and yes, if you live on the outskirts of a small town or a small suburb near woods, the odds are you may spot either an Elfydd or some of the other fairy. Okay, the reality of it is they keep to themselves because of the fear that humans usually exude. And yes, the Elfydd race across the board are born very empathic. Okay, to the point they can sense the intention of animals as well. Some of them have figured out how to sense the intention of plants, but that's a rarity. I was actually meaning on doing something last night as well. I was planning on doing something last night about showing you guys a couple of tricks that are very doable. Okay. But when we look at the Elfydd Race, we are looking at where are we here? Oh, more often than not, now if you're actually Philip, Philip is asking which are the ones with so-called glowing red eyes. Okay. Now, someday if you're actually talking about the Elfydd Race, okay, those will be those are usually going to be your those are probably your dark elves and dark elves, okay, or deep elves depending on who you talk to. They are the ones that spend most of their time underground, okay, but that's because they have infrared vision, meaning they see heat. This is why their eyes glow red. Okay, you will find some races have yellow glowing eyes, blue glowing eyes. Okay, I've even run into a few. Ultimately, yes, but let's be clear about something, Philip. Dark magic is only dark based on intention. Magic itself is absolutely neutral, just like money. Money is totally neutral. It doesn't care how you feel. Okay, magic itself is neutral. It depends on what you decide to do with it. Thing is, most of the so-called dark elfin are very focused on the idea of they are superior and anything superior should be eliminated. But there is a little problem. See, the rest of the elfin communities don't agree with them, so you end up with an ongoing war amongst the various different races. Okay, yes, the high elves. The reason people call them high elfin is not because of the fact they're on drugs. It's because they hold their own outlook on life. Okay, in much higher self-esteem than everybody else's. Essentially, they tend to look down on people. Joe is going, since I'm an empath and I can sense things good and bad, which is one of the reasons why I'm still single. Yep, that can be a royal pain. But I will tell you, Joe, okay, something to focus on because you've also figured out how to tap into the energy. Part of what you're doing is because, and I suspect, is because you've learned how to really expect the worst of people, and therefore you have, in all likelihood, put up a subconscious wall saying, "Stay back. I don't desire the drama." Philip, with an empath, okay, if you focus on keeping people away from you, this will stop them from approaching. Okay, and it does work. Empathy is one of those really understated abilities, and debatably one of the strongest, and certainly one of the most useful in a lot of ways. Okay, problem is, if you're focusing on what can go wrong, which is what corporeals are taught on the whole, focus on what can go wrong. By doing that, you're creating a barrier around yourself and you're missing the other side of it. What can go right? I'm just moving this back and bringing up live chat. Absolutely, Philip, it really can. And that being said, usually Philip has said, empathy can be very painful. If you're starting to feel pain, okay, take your hand, either one, doesn't matter if it's left or right. Take it palm down on something solid that usually sits on the ground. Be this a heavy chair, a heavy table, a wall, the floor itself, doesn't matter. Something that normally sits on the ground. Okay, and yes, by the way, in case you missed out on that, on the floor means a tree on the ground, on a rock, on a part of rock, and I mean a chunk of rock, like a boulder that cannot easily be picked up. Focus on that and feel the excess energy running out of your hand and into the ground, much like water out of a faucet. Okay, this will help keep things in perspective. But it really boils down to your intention on what you're planning on doing. Boy, I sure came in tight today, didn't I? Black Dragon, Semper Fi. It's funny. I just wrote an article that I'll be posting in the next day or two about the whole thing about the military and the whole 9 yards on that end, and specifically about Remembrance Day itself. Okay, and yes, I've got articles I'm going to be starting to post, and more uploading of videos and what have you. The Elfydd Race. Some of my best friends are Elfydd, and yes, again, this really boils down to to knowing how to deal with them. Okay, but we have to remember the majority of that species desires peace. Mankind, unfortunately, has a bad habit of shooting first and asking if you're friendly second. Okay, and no, I'm not going to pick which country is worse at it. You know, there's a lot of misunderstanding there. Okay, so when we start looking at when are they going to come out en masse, well, let me ask you this. What do you really think would happen if an entire cadre of Elfydd walked out dressed in proper Elfydd attire, okay, and just all of a sudden marched into a small town or a big city? How well do you think they would be received by the general population? You know, this is something we have to consider, or at least it's wise to consider. Okay, now the Elfydd race is split. It is both a matriarch and a patriarch, but as with many cultures, okay, the Elfydd species, what they did was the females are much more what's the word I'm looking for? I don't exactly want to say adept, but much more focused on the arts, on making life enjoyable, making life comfortable. Okay. I asked the same question, Philip. Philip's asking, sometimes I wonder if mankind desire all of the pieces more than one piece. Honestly, mankind has forgotten one critical factor, or more to the point, humankind has. They have forgotten humanity. You've trained each other, and I do mean the people that are in positions of power have taught the people below them and trickled it down, so that humans are more concentrated on how much stuff can I have, how much of the bits and pieces can I have, than how well can it all fit together. You know, this is where we have to look at the reality behind it. Yeah, Black Dragon's going, they would be safer in a small town. In a large city, there would be a lot of bloodshed. Not saying which side will be shedding most blood. Yeah, and that would be the problem. Depending on the individual, there are humans that are downright deadly close up. Okay, but Elfydd are taught to survive. Humans are not taught to survive. They're taught to focus on stuff. Not except for when you start looking at the high grade military training. Okay. When you start looking at your specialty teams, your Marines, any of the military training really focuses on that side of it. Okay. But when you're talking about humans, they are taught on the whole, do what you're told, do what you're told, and somebody else will protect you. The Elfydd race goes, yes, do what you're told. You have to fight if you've gone into the military side of their life. You absolutely have to follow the rules. But unlike humans, a human breaks the rules in the military, and the human will be court-martialed. Okay, they'll be told you're no longer in the military, which to me is kind of counterproductive in one sense, because what you're doing is saying, okay, you won't follow any of the rules. You won't follow the rules, all of the rules we lay out. So we're going to throw you out of the military, and now we're going to brand you as a problem. And now you're not going to follow any of the rules. Okay. But with the Elfydd race, they go, follow the rules. If you're in the military, follow the rules, follow the orders that you're given. Okay. If you've got a question around them, absolutely bring it up later, but follow it first. If you disobey a direct order, they will not court-martial you. They will kill you. Okay, and they will do it in a public fashion and with everybody, friends, family, and strangers alike, being told this person is being executed because he did not follow this direct order. Okay, if they are not in the military, it is still, the Elfydd race still focuses on the idea of following the laws that are laid out. Now, are they a problem? Do they have any interest in taking over Earth? No. They gave that right up centuries back. Okay. And turned it over to the humans. This is why they disappeared out of sight. But they have come to understand that yes, humans are a volatile race, but they're extremely undisciplined. And the one thing you'll find out with the Elfydd race in anything they do, not only are they disciplined, but they are very meticulous. Quite often to a fault, in all fairness. Okay, now just looking back up here, Black Dragon, I do agree with you. Small towns tend to be a little bit more cliquey, but at least they don't tend to start off with fire first and ask second. And that's just the reality behind that side of life. So we are looking at a race that does interact quite nicely with people. Okay, or can. The neat part about it is if you're treating nature decently, and this also is inclusive of the idea of putting out statues of, your ceramic statues of gnomes, the little mushroom people that some people have got statues of, anything that is nature oriented, which by the way means your rock gardens are a prime target, as it were. Yeah, Joe goes, that's okay, Philip. I repeat myself over and over again, like like the Energizer Bunny. I even tell myself, shut up, will you? Yeah, and this is something, again, this is something that you're looking at a specially trained group. What you're referring to here, Philip. Philip has said a high-level person who left the Chinese mafia in Australia, the skin of his face was carved off as punishment. They let him live as a visible reminder to others. This is something that humans do. And in all fairness, it works to a degree, but all it does, in all fairness, from what I've seen, is it literally takes the people that are borderline, on the edge of doing that, of breaking that kind of protocol, and stops them. If they're going to break it, they're going to break it anyway. And all the threats in the world won't matter. Now, the Elfydd Race simply went, okay, we're just not taking that chance. We will make the example by going, okay, we killed him for this reason. Here's the information on what we did because of this action. Now, if you choose to follow that action, absolutely, we're going to do the same thing or a similar variation. Humans have this idea, and this is where many of you are making a mistake. The Elfydd Race does not believe in maintaining the health or the living, the cost of supporting someone who is not productive. Now, this does not mean that a handicapped or a challenged individual will be terminated in most cases. Okay, with many of the reptilian races, if you can't pull your own weight in the way they expect, you're part of the dinner menu, which works out really well on their end. Not so much for the person's hand that's held up. But we have to take a look at things, or it would be advisable, that much of what people would call alpha technology is, number one, nature. Well, it's nature and energy based. Okay, this is how they maneuver. And yes, some of them have figured out how to move from one part of the world to another, short distances, using what humans have learned is a gate method. Okay, Joe, the neat part is this. Okay, and I understand your concern. I myself figured I am way too literal for people, and it gets me into way too much trouble. But I will tell you, the woman that will take you, that will connect with you on a permanent base, is the one that is secure enough in herself to know that you're doing what you can, and as long as you're treating them well, which there is no question you do. That kind of woman is the one that is actually willing to accept you as is, while encouraging you to become a better version of yourself without the ultimatum or the threat problem. Okay. The fact of the matter is, Joe, and this is literally for you if you haven't done it already. Okay. And I know I've shown you this before. If you haven't done so already, put these 4 words on your fridge tonight. I am worth it. Okay. Those are the 4 strongest words in combination I have ever found in any language. Where it comes to helping, put your self-esteem together. Okay, your self-worth, self-esteem, self-motivation. Let me ask you this. When you look in the mirror, when you look in the mirror, Joe, would you date a woman that repeated herself and that repeated herself and or is autistic? Okay, assuming, of course, that she treated you properly. That's the first thing you look at is you look in the mirror and go, okay, this is how I am, this is how I treat people. Now, here's the kicker. Probably 25, maybe 30 years back, okay, and right there is a woman out there that undoubtedly has the same outlook. Um, you know, about 20 years, maybe 25 years ago, I came across a chap that I know was a multimillionaire, and you'll understand why in a moment. He was an American. Okay, he took a list. He took out a national full page ad in a newspaper, and he wrote out a list of 100 things. Okay, he put the top of the ad, and this is why I say he was a multimillionaire. He took a page out on the top of the ad, okay, that said, looking for a wife. Listed off 100 itemized things. Okay. I never actually got a copy of the list that he put together. But he listed off 100 things. And he goes, at the bottom of the list, if you do not meet each and every one of these stipulations, don't bother to call me. Okay. And what ended up happening is he ended up married. Now, myself, when I went looking for my current other half, okay, I listed off 50 things. I kid you not, 50 things, some of which were pretty, shall we say, were pretty specific, and you may consider inconsequential. Okay, but I put 50 things on the list. I never showed it to anybody. I simply wrote it down and focused on that. Well, I've been connected with this young lass for for the last 3 years. Yeah, I got a couple of days on you there, Black. As in, I'm 60. I'll be 61 at this point. About 8 months. Well, May. So you figure it out. But you are absolutely correct there. Black, you're absolutely correct. Some people choose to remain single. Okay, and that's fine. That whole issue is simply a question of you don't desire that one person with you, or you're enjoying yourself going with whoever you please. Obviously, this does have some stipulations and some hiccup and some guidelines that it would be wise to follow. But everybody's absolutely entitled to their own thing to make them happy. Philip, I honestly don't know. Number one, first and foremost, not 61 yet. Okay, but I will tell you this. I still have trouble identifying what fun is. Okay, so that becomes a bit of a complication. About the only thing I know for an absolute certainty on the whole that I find rather entertaining is confusing the daylights out of the medical professions. Now, this said, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but on Nathan's panel, we had an absolute riot, except for the technological hiccups that seem to go hand in hand. Okay, but where it comes to, and I'm starting to come out of the shadows a lot more readily at this point. And I do intend, one of my goals at this point is to make absolutely certain. Well, that's very true there, Philip. Fun is whatever is fun. I'm still trying to figure out what the definition is, and that's something I don't worry too much about. I figure if I'm not stressed, I'll take that as being a sign of it being enjoyable. What I do know is the more organized I get, the more relaxed I am, which is why my filing cabinet has now been sorted out where I can actually find what I'm looking for. Where did I put it? You know me, if you've been here at all, you know exactly the way this works. My brain all of a sudden says, hey, you forgot to put something somewhere. But this very issue that ends up getting me thinking in terms of what am I working on? You know, is it working for me or not? Raymond, that's an absolutely fantastic way to say it. Raymond just said, I like to say I'm getting over myself to be myself. You know, I go with the idea, where are we? Um, it's something you gotta understand, Joe, at least something I came to understand. Okay, is where it comes to autistic. Autistic seems to be quite literally, and I don't know what the clinical definition is, nor in all fairness am I overly concerned. To me, every autistic person I've met seems to simply think in a different fashion. They are more open to changes or to, if you will, nervous tics, that sort of thing, because they see beyond what the average person is taught. And they therefore take that open. But there are people that do that that are not autistic. Okay. All you got, and the big hiccup on your part there, Joe, okay, is the first thing that's imperative is that you get past this idea of who would want to date me because I've got these limitations. Let me ask you this. And this does, I'm picking on you, or I'm talking to you directly, Joe, but understand people. This applies to every one of you that is in this kind of a boat, and there are staggeringly high numbers of people like you. But let me ask you, okay, when you're looking in the mirror, do I know the answer to these, it's pretty cut and dried. You treat women with respect. You treat women you give women the freedom to make their own decisions without you giving them an ultimatum. Okay. You certainly don't beat on women. So realistically, when you look at that, this is what women are looking for. Quite seriously, this is what men are looking for. Somebody that will simply accept them as is. And the only viable stipulation, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one there, Joe, but the only viable stipulation you functionally seem to have is don't cheat on me and don't treat me like garbage. Okay. These are about the only two things that seem to be a real relevant concern. The rest, there may be specifics. I'm not you. Okay. I can tell you that you gotta let go of the idea that you're going to be on your own forever. Okay, it's a counterproductive thought process in case you haven't pieced it together. Now, what we are looking at here, and again, this is something else. You know, you take a look at the Elfydd races. Okay, I've seen deep elves really get along with the high and with the highborn elves. Okay, and with the Elfydd. You know, I've seen them cross cultures without a problem. Okay, this is a doable thing. If you've got people that are so stuck in proper etiquette, in the proper way to walk. I was talking to a human today, and they literally were laying out, they took etiquette classes that stipulated How do you walk? How do you sit? How do you hold your teacup or your coffee cup? How do you interact with people? Okay, the Elfydd make human etiquette classes look like a walk in the park. Okay, or better yet, a free for all. Ultimately, Black, you're on the right track. Because once you're content with the guy in the mirror or the girl in the mirror, whichever one you are, once you're content with you, once you eliminate the things you're not content with, this will make you more approachable by other people. Oh, that's wonderful there, Philip. Philip's saying autistic people are vulnerable to sensory overload, where non-autistic people may seek out the same in the UK. They now have autism-friendly concerts that don't bombard people. This is what is called a social adaptation, social evolution, really. And it's a fantastic thing to hear about. The other thing I found out a number of years ago in the UK, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Philip, but if you desire to buy a vegetable, and I mean just a head of lettuce, it's relatively inexpensive. If you desire to buy a chocolate bar, now you're looking at pricey. Western society has it backwards. Oh, okay. Black is going, I was married and divorced. She had a kid that wasn't mine. That would have brought about a divorce for me. I mean, I ended up divorced as well. Okay. Fortunately, it was for different reasons I'm not going to get into, but I still have a friendship with my ex-wife. Yes, as far as I understand, that's a rarity. But we still help each other out, which is, works out well. But no, fidelity is one of the two most common causes of a marriage breakdown. Well, it's funny. You start treating, I mean, I take a look at that. Philip goes, promoters have been pleasantly surprised by how successful the autism friendly concerts have been. The funny thing is, yes, it makes it easier for other people, for the autistic people. The funny part about that is it also makes it more enjoyable for everybody else. It's a way of being all inclusive. Okay. Now you're not going to take a concert of any form and make it more enjoyable for an agoraphobe. Okay. You're just not going to, because a concert by its nature requires a lot of people. Okay. A claustrophobe is still going to have the same problem. Too many people, they'll get claustrophobic. But when you're dealing with emotional overload, rest assured, yes, autistic people seem to be more susceptible to it. Okay. But autistic people, regular people, everyday run of the mill people, and empaths all have the same problem. And this is why you make one that is autism friendly. You're actually appealing to a pretty wide array. You know, the reality of it is, from your standpoint, when we start looking at the Elfydd race, we got kind of sidetracked here, which is just plain normal. Okay, you got to remember, when we're looking at the Elfydd race and we're talking about perfectionism, these guys pay extreme attention to detail in virtually everything they do. Okay, as in, they literally teach their kids to conserve energy by moving efficiently, as in, not how do you walk, but, well, that too. How do you walk effectively but how do you multitask so that you're utilizing every advantage you can? Okay. I don't blame you there, Joe. They do come with a lot of added challenges. And the one thing that I will say, and there's a lot of people out there that absolutely will take on a kid that belongs to somebody else. The kicker is this: when you go to do that, okay, it is imperative that the prospective couple have to treat that child as though it is actually both of theirs. The parent that is the bloodline of the child has to look at it and go, okay, you got tell the partner they've got the right to step into discipline, not you know it's my child, I'll deal with him, or the partner, the non-blood related, goes, it's your child, you deal with him. That will not work. Okay, and this is based on well over 100,000 clients under my belt. Okay, now the thing is, when we take a look at the Elfydd Race, understand something very important. Okay, they covered most of the world. Okay, then when they ended up with a civil war, well, there was one group in particular that went after it. They ended up with a world war, but it was a lot more volatile than what mankind calls war. And this is what forced them underground. Okay, mankind, because they reproduce faster and are easier to repair. Okay, we're able to overpopulate the planet, and I don't mean we're running out of room, so don't go there, guys. Humans populated the planet so fast and with such aggression that it became safer. It became much safer for the Elfydd race to go into hiding, as it were. And it's only just in the last 10 years, from what I've seen, that humans are starting to pay attention to nature itself, to other races, to other species. When we take a look back at the beginning days of Greenpeace, okay, this was a small group of people that went out of their way to try and protect different things around the world. Now they are a global organization. Okay, now you are absolutely right, Philip. My dad used to say it takes a minute to destroy trust, it takes a lifetime to rebuild it. You know, but with the Elfydd race, they found it safer, not so much easier, because there was a lot of adjustment that had to happen. They gave up for centuries living with the light with the warmth of the sun on them. Okay, in order to simply survive. Okay, yes, they are starting to resurface, and they are starting to intermix with people, which is why you're now finding people that very easily come up with the issue of being half breeds. Okay, something about the Elfydd race. One of the things about the reason their ears are pointed is because they are direction sensitive. Okay, that tiny little tip, when you get up to the top of the ear that's pointed, okay, that tiny tip is hypersensitive to different energies that humans don't even recognize most of the time. Okay, and this is where we have a society that the Elfydd race, because it is not geared towards shoot first, ask second. Okay, which is a good thing, because some of these guys can point at you and stop your heart. There are humans that can do the same thing. The Elfydd race just does it at a much greater range. Okay, a much greater distance. You know, so we are looking at a race that has been around for literally millennia. I cannot begin to tell you how old it is, but I would be inclined to say on Earth, it is somewhere likely close to 1 billion years old. The Elfydd race. They are not on the surface, and some of their individuals are that old. Absolutely, it does, Black. You know, and this is one of the biggest things. This is one of the biggest things you have to take into consideration. Okay, if you're looking at the mirror like I did when I was a kid, and this is why I turned around. Okay, that was literally why I turned around and wrote this book. Because when I was growing up, I was literally standing in the same boat that you are in a lot of ways there, Joe. Okay, when I wrote this, I was looking in the world and going, number one, I don't trust anybody. I'm still having trouble with that, by the way. But I went, how can I change that? And the first thing I found, okay, I actually figured it out before I found those 4 words, is regardless of how you feel, regardless of what you're doing, put a smile on your face. Okay, if you don't feel like smiling, that's where your stubborn streak comes in. Smile anyway. Okay, if you still can't pull it off, paint a smile on your face. Yes, it's going to look fake. It is fake. But I will tell you that energy does help rebuild your own personal outlook on yourself. Today, I still have this problem, in all fairness, of whether people are paying attention. But thankfully, some of you guys in this stream have been absolutely instrumental in pointing out, not just by coming into the stream, but I get messages through, through Yahoo, through Messenger, through email. I get lots of messages telling me, yes, what you're doing is working. This is what helps me keep focused on it. World Bigfoot, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Absolutely, Raymond. Now, before I go to that, we go to World. And World Bigfoot, this is the link to World Stream. So do give them a listen. Click on it when you get the opportunity. Give them a listen. And what did I just do? I love when that works. You give him a listen. If you like what he has to say, give him a thumbs up and do subscribe to the channel and then share the daylights out of it. Okay. I'm looking at this, Raymond, and absolutely, Raymond L goes, that's why I say getting over myself to be myself. Also known as get out of your own way. Okay. And I've been very, very good at creating blocks for myself. Amy Tonga, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I trust your day has been going well. At the very least, enjoyably productive. It's funny. I got up and when I headed out for lunch this morning, went out to drop my son off, right, at 11:30. I never made it back through the door until 20 after 4. Nathan, what do we got here? Well, Nathan goes, fear and insecurity have been my biggest blocks. Now, I got an odd question for you, Nathan. Okay. Where it comes to beer, and you don't have to answer this. Okay, this is just a curiosity thing. But have you reached a point where you're ready to put beer and where you're ready to put the yoke of beer behind you? Okay. That's the real key factor in doing so, in actually making things work. Where are we here? Let's stop that from scrolling, shall we? Oh, okay. Well, my apologies. I reacted to what was said there. Yes, fear is definitely a problem. But let me ask you this. Are you afraid of being wrong? Or, afraid of being wrong, afraid of being hurt? Or are you afraid of being right? More often than not, I find the fear of being right is far more devastating than the fear of being wrong. And world is, as just pointed out here, tomorrow on his show, he's got an Idaho researcher surrounded by angry Sasquatch, and she got pics and video of it. Now, that ought to be really interesting to watch. See, I'm lucky my mind's already shot. No, world, that is a phenomenally interesting setup. You know, because you don't find many Sasquatch to get mad, and especially not a group of them. They're usually a pretty placid group, at least in my experience. Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong there, world, but where it comes to Sasquatch that you've run into, okay, or that you've researched, they're not usually an aggressive race. Absolutely black. You know, unfortunately, mankind has been taught over the last several centuries fear everything. Okay, actually, in all fairness, it's been over the last several thousand years. Oh, yeah, well, stupid can't be fixed. Well, it can be. It cuts down the bloodline spread. No, apparently, when it comes to dealing with stupid people, I have one heck of a vocal temper for it. Okay, I was actually told by a shrink, look, you've got a really bad vocal temper when it comes to dealing with stupid people. So go home, have a nice life, you know, and stay away from stupid people. And good luck with that. Well, I managed to stay away from stupid people, all right. I stayed away from everybody. Now I've reached a point where I've got to step out of the shadows and go, okay, stupid doesn't get, cannot be fixed, but true ignorance can be educated. Stupid is usually fatal, in case you hadn't noticed there, world. I'm just looking at this world, just saying, I'm just noticed. World goes, I have one still picture up on my community tab right now. A big mom with two little ones behind her, spying on her. She was in the nursery area, so they have little patience for that. One of the big things that you gotta remember: Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Abominable Snowman. There's a number of different names they got that they're known by, depending on what part of the world they're in. All of them are essentially family oriented. And when I say all, I should say the massive majority. Okay. Very protective of their little cloud, their little families. Yeah, I ran into that. I'm just looking at that there, Emmy. Okay, Emmy's going, anxiety feels, are you sure it's fear and not anxiety? Anxiety is essentially triggered by fear more often than not. But and the other thing I've also noticed is an anxiety attack can feel very much like a heart attack as well. Hey, Black Dragon, has anybody ever told you you may be obsessed with bacon? I think that was literally all I had for supper last night, by the way. What it was either last night I just had a rasher of bacon, or the night before. I'm not sure which. Okay, but I gotta be careful because I cooked the bacon and my young. That was not nice. Okay, for a minute there, I thought that the whole thing had dropped because I know all of a sudden my screen went off. Oh, where are we here? You know, so I mean, from my standpoint, and again, I take a look at the Elfydd Race. They go through some of the things that people go through, but they are much more connected to the ramifications of individual action on, on nature itself, on the local flora and fauna. That is not a surprise. I mean, let's face it, Sasquatch are a lot of things, but really good cooks isn't one of them. Okay. So of course bacon, as you well know, has a great scent to it. Kevin Whippup, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. Bacon and scalloped potatoes, it absolutely, if it's cooked right, is really good. Yeah. So I mean, I look at this and go, one of the biggest differences between the human race and the Elfid race is the Elfid race is much more cognitively aware in all levels of society of their impact on nature. Okay. And that is the big thing that sets them aside. See, it was the Elfid race that decided when things went really sour that they needed to bring a few other races up on it. And they needed some backup. So they turned around and did just that. And yes, I know that I understand that many people that follow that follow the religious cant have a real problem with somebody saying, "Hey, the Alfred race stepped in and built humans." But you got to remember, okay, when we are talking about humans, okay, humans were designed for war. You know this by any of the research that you're doing. You may be turning a blind eye to it. Okay, but, well, without sugar, and I'm referring to refined sugar, the human race could have some problems. Without salt, there wouldn't be any problem, they'd all be dead. Okay, but you can get salt and sugar via natural means. Down on the island, we used to make a beautiful salad. When I was a kid, we'd take salt seagrass out of the ocean, okay, put it in a bowl, put your dandelion greens on it, and put honeysuckle petals on it. Absolutely, and then of course, if it was right time of year, you had strawberries. A perfectly natural food, perfectly natural salad that even me being a carnivore thoroughly enjoyed. Of course, you can't buy saltgrass inland that I've ever heard of. You know, I keep looking at mankind going, seaweed salad. I like seaweed personally. I do not, however, like dried seaweed. That to me is absolutely not an enjoyable thing. Okay. And there's a type of seaweed that I really wouldn't recommend eating. I don't know what the type is called, but I do know it's got these little black air-filled bladders. That seaweed, not a great flavor. Okay, and yes, I'm speaking from experience in this case. And I appreciate the clarification on that one there, World. World's just bringing us up to speed. Salt was used as wages to pay the troops in ancient Rome. So if you were a lousy soldier, you weren't worth your salt. Okay, which makes total sense. Now, I know from my standpoint, because I did spend a lifetime as a Roman soldier, I was a great soldier until they made one mistake. And then, quite frankly, I went not only AWOL, but became very murderous. You know, I did eventually, 10 years later, I did eventually quit killing Roman soldiers just because they were wearing uniform. That was no long, took 10 years before I wouldn't drop somebody just because they were in that uniform. To say the least, I had a little bit of a problem with it. But the Elfydd race, by the way, has been on the borders of many of the wars mankind's been involved in. Okay, I've heard all kinds of tales where a platoon of humans were moving into position and no other human encounter, and yet the platoon was wiped out to a man. Okay, this is usually the efforts of the Elfydd race going, no, we're getting involved in this particular one. Usually because it was threatening the either peoples and or animals of flora and or fauna they knew. Okay. Joe's going, we were talking about gnomes. Where actually do they exist? Most gnomes you'll find in the light forests. Okay, you'll find in the light forests or in rock-filled gullies. Okay, usually ones like a landslide is a perfect place for them to set up home after the landslide has happened. Oh, no, it boiled down to this, Philip. I was a Roman soldier, and I was given a direct order by my commanding officer to stand guard while they turned around and raped a 13-year-old. I didn't take kindly to it. I tried talking them out of the thing, and I was told point blank, stand guard. You don't have to participate, but stand guard and let us do our thing. Well, that didn't work out well. This was with five of my best friends. I'd run with them for 2 years. Okay, we'd fought back to back. And my lieutenant pulled that. And I forget whether he was called a lieutenant or what the rank was, but my commanding officer told me flat out, you stand guard. So I stood guard for about 15 seconds. And this young lass was pleading for her life, that they don't do this. Well, I broke ranks, wiped them out, and then went on the run with her. And it took her 10 years to convince me that killing a soldier just because he was a soldier in the Roman army wasn't really functional. No, not before the landslide. See, unfortunately, world, there have been gnomes caught in landslides, and much like humans caught in landslides, it doesn't bode well for the gnomes. But they tend to take the lighter woods. They don't go deep into the forest, right? They take to the lighter woods, light to medium at worst, if you will. Oh, I wasn't interested in whether the Germans were killing them. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I just didn't get in the way of the Germans killing them. Because from my way of thinking, they were doing what I needed, what I had decided was going to happen. I didn't side with the Germans, but I also didn't stop them. Oh, absolutely they are. Intriguingly enough, Philip, the Elfydd race actually built the dwarven race. Okay, and for the exact same purpose. Okay, they were built for war. The problem was when they built the the dwarven race, the dwarves took to the ground so quickly that they wouldn't come out to do anything. Okay, as long as you didn't actually go in looking for them or disturb their world, they were quite happy to leave everybody else do their own thing. So yeah, they're definitely aware of them. Do they always get along? Absolutely not. Because here's the kicker. Okay, humans, as I've mentioned before, are very greedy, very egocentric, etc. But compared to a dwarf, when you're looking at the dwarven race, it's not a question of gold is the thing that gets their attention. It's shiny. I swear these guys are like drunk bearded crows half the time. Okay, because it's a question of if it is shiny. Gold, of course, polishes better than most metals. You know, so I mean, when you're looking at the Elfydd race, of course, the Elfydd race very disciplined in all they did. The dwarven race, not quite so much so. Yes, and that's just it. And I mean, like I mentioned last week, just a real quick jump back. The dwarven race love their shiny things. They love to fight, and 90% of their food, not to mention their drink, is fermented. Okay. So yeah, I think we can safely say the race is essentially alcoholic. But we're dealing with two different sides of the same coin, as it were. But the Elfydd race is number one, very aware of what they're capable of, very high standards on the whole, although there are variations. Well, I'd call them cave drunks, except for the fact that would indicate they stayed in caves. You know, rest assured they'd come out when they ran out. You know, the thing I find that is absolutely fantastic with a lot of the Elfydd race is they prize intellect. They protect nature, they protect the denizens of the planet. If the denizens are treating the planet properly. Okay, that works. you know, yeah, you want to really punish a dwarf. You put him in prison and take all of his alcohol away. You want to punish anybody else, put him in the same cell. You know, but when you're looking at the Elfydd race, they are extremely focused on intellect, on advancing the mind. Okay. They look at the more intellect, the more knowledge you have, that is the more functional knowledge. They're really not interested in bits and pieces of useless trivia, which is pretty much where the humans run into the big hiccups. Okay, human humans get caught up in this idea of essentially information that is not really functionally useful. The Elfydd race focuses on what can I learn in the here and now to make my individual world more effective, and to make society itself, the Elfydd society itself, more effective. If they don't come up with an idea on their own, which quite honestly is not surprising a lot of the time, they get a little caught up in the minutia of it. They will turn to their leaders and go, "Okay, what do we require?" And that's where they're more intellectually advanced individuals. That's why they end up at the top of society. Humans go, "I'm so confused. I'm just going to throw the dice in the air and pray that something works." This works out really well in many cases until you start throwing lawn darts like that. Philip goes, are there more six-fingered elves than six-fingered humans? I honestly couldn't even begin to tell you, but I will tell you this. There are way more web-fingered Elfid than there are web-fingered humans. Okay. I really don't have a number for you, but I will tell you the six-fingered side of it. Most elves, in all fairness, have three. Well, three fingers and a thumb. Why? I don't know, but I do know this. It gives them a much stronger grip. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Black Dragon just bringing us in up to date. Philip, I'm guessing that was supposed to be takes. 2 salt pills for every gallon of water I drank. Oh, okay. And then Philip, yeah, I got all the way to junior in my swimming lessons, and I was good at it. I enjoyed it. But what killed it for me was the day I drowned. Sadly, world, that does seem to be very much the case. Okay. I heard it put one day by somebody that where it comes to humans, they are promoted to their level of incompetence. In other words, keep promoting them until they can't do anything, and then leave them there. Okay. The Elfydd Race doesn't do that. Okay. It takes a long time to move up in ranks because of what they focus on. Yeah, polydactyl cats are a pretty common little thing as well. Well, Black Dragon, I'd be much more impressed if you could swim like a fish on land. You know, I used to drink like a fish, if that helps. But no, the Elfydd Race is very focused on the intellectual side, in creative artistic side. So if you're an artist, I mean, one of the best ways to get their attention, if you happen to be an artist and you like the outdoors, you're likely to have Elfydd poking around, taking a look at what you're up to, if for no other reason than to learn the technique that you're utilizing. Because again, they are so concentrated on the idea of new methods. They are very like, they're very, in a lot of ways, they are very like what the Lemurians became. Okay. Very creative in the extreme and very open about it. Now, of course, the catch is they don't, because so many humans are, shall we say, problematic. The Elfydd Race has learned through its own dealings that dealing head on with humans on the whole is usually a dangerous idea. That doesn't mean they won't do it. Yeah, I always found that the dive, it's kind of like falling downstairs, or falling off a balcony. I always found the fall didn't really hurt so much as the landing. But, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The diving on land, the best way I can put it is learn to roll with it. Okay. This idea of putting your hands straight out in front of you to cut the ground, good way to break your fingers. Not a good way to swim. Okay. But the neat part is when you permit yourself to astral travel, travel in the astral plane can very easily be done and very easily replicated by effectively swimming through the ether. Yes, I agree with you there, Philip. I didn't know it was called the Peter Principle. I've known a couple of people of Peters that, you really had to wonder how they actually got their shoes on at the same, on different feet. But yeah, I agree with you there. It's like the guy that fell off the the skyscraper. As he's falling, people are yelling, gets to the 12th floor. How you doing? Ah, so far so good. Gets down to the 5th floor. How's it going? So far so good. Unfortunately, I will tell you, the fall has killed very few people over the years. It's that sudden stop on the ground floor that causes all the screw ups. You know, and do understand, one of the best teachers in the world is literally experience. Although I personally recommend learning from other people's miscalculations. World, you're absolutely right there. Although I'm lucky, okay, because I don't have to worry about mind flayers because they rely on you having a brain. I check mine at the door. I go, yep, I got one. Didn't want that anyway. It's like I tell people when they go, do you think this? It's like, no, I gave up thinking. It confuses me. But yeah, according to, I mean, D&D is a wonderful little game. Mhm. I don't know, but I will tell you, you jump and you dive feet first into the ground with your feet pointed. Um, I think that's actually falling with grace personally, but you will break your toes and ankles depending on how high you're jumping from. Because clearly ballerinas, okay. Now I know females are called ballerinas. I have no idea what male ballerinas are called. You know, but I often wonder about that. I did find out doing some research though that if you're jumping from a high height, the only functional difference between hitting the ground and hitting the water is in the water you won't break the skin. Okay. That's about the only difference. You know, and to me that's not much of a difference. You're still dead in most cases. Honestly, Philip, I've actually looked into that on occasion because I had clients that were ballerinas. Okay. And the damage they do to their feet is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, it is almost irreparable. It would take you'd literally have to bind the feet with a balance plate underneath, with a support plate underneath to force the feet to come back to a standard pattern. Okay, do doable, and you got to give them credit for dedication. Ballet looks beautiful on the stage. Okay, now please tell me, Bram Black, that wasn't two 3-story falls back to back. You know, my dad, I know my dad dropped 180 feet and lived through it. You know, myself, I've not tried that one before. And I'm not getting out of my car to do that. You know, but I like the way it was put, I want to die, I want to die peaceably in my sleep like my grandmother did, not screaming in terror like the passengers in her car. Yeah. Yeah, and that makes I do like that there, Philip. Phil's suggesting that we call a male ballerina a professional dancer. Maybe. I am curious now because, well, that's the way I get. Take this, we take that over there, and we go this. What is a professional male ballet dancer? Male ballet dancer called? Hey, I just see what Google suggests. Oh, try that would get you out of the way. What are male ballerinas called? Oh, there we go. According to this, I'm not listening to the whole thing. Well, it's not a ballerina. The term ballerina is reserved for females. Only a male ballet dancer is called exactly that, a dancer. And that's straight out of Google, which I don't necessarily say is great, but it does do something for you. Where we go here? One thing I learned a long time ago, Black Dragon, impossible is something I do not personally believe in. I will not debate that male dancers don't tend to do that. Okay, but I'm not about to say it's impossible. Just nobody's ever done it. You know, from my standpoint, what we got here? When we take a look at the Elfydd Race, you should some of the dancing that they do makes if you take a look, I mean, it's great. You want to get an idea of how the Elfydd actually celebrate dance. The Cirque du Soleil will give you a vague idea. Okay, because they do it in the Elfydd Race when they're dancing, especially the ones that grow up in the woods. Okay, do their dancing in amongst the trees, in amongst the branches. No, I don't need a Google witch. you know, that's the way to put it. I think bulgaroni is when you take macaroni and add bologna to it. And in all fairness, I've tried that before. That I've actually experienced that. That's not bad. Yeah, and that's pretty much where I stand with it there, Black. You know, like I know it's not impossible for me to bite my tongue. I just haven't figured out how to do it because I keep hurting myself when I try. So I just go, okay, I'm just not I am not politically correct. I'm not good at that side of it. So I just don't bother putting the effort into it. But when you like I said, the Elfydd Race, they are I won't say they're perfectionistic, although I really could, but they are very focused on detail. And they have no qualms about turning and learning from whoever's available, providing the person takes into consideration that they have, if you will, social hangups about doing things properly, which works out well when they sit down with dwarven miners or your gnomish gem cutters, okay, or even your gnomish weavers. I get a kick out of it because sometimes if you get to the right part of the woods, you can find you can find little woven little bells that are way too big for a weaver, for what are they called? The weaver bird. Okay, a weaver bird builds a nest, a woven grass nest that's that big, essentially. A little gnome will build a much bigger one. So you may look at it and go, well, that's an incredibly big weaver bird. Yeah. Like ultimately, Philip, I just extrapolated. Okay. Bolgnaroni, okay, from my standpoint, sounds very much like macaroni with bologna as the meat source. And absolutely with a nice cheese, one that stays where it's put, it absolutely is good. I tried it one day with cheese whiz. My brother used to eat it that way. I didn't like the flavor with the cheese whiz. You know, but and this is one of the things you find with the Elfydd race. They are very much vegetarian. They do eat meat. Okay. So I don't think you call that vegetarian so much as um vegetable oriented or primarily vegetarian. Okay. But they most of their food they eat raw. Okay, and that is I'm talking the vegetable side of it, the plant-based stuff. You virtually never see an elephant actually cook a plant. That's terrible, world. You do realize that is just terrible. World's gone. Cheese whiz is what a dairy beast feeds out. Yo, that's just absolutely terrible. But you're looking at a race that absolutely they will take care of their children. They do not abandon them. They will not leave them home alone. They do take a long time for the kids to move out. Absolutely not. Okay, absolutely not their world. The Elfydd race does hunt animals. Okay, it's just the majority of their food happens to be your vegetables, fruits, nuts, leafy greens, roots, whatever's available. But they still know they require meat. So will they hunt meat? Absolutely, but they literally will only hunt enough to take that 1 minute to have for one meal. They don't deal with leftover meat because they don't refrigerate it. Okay, so they're very focused on that end. You know, they're very focused on the idea of literally waste not, want not. Okay, instead, this is why they refer to humans on the whole, not as humans, but as wastrels. Okay, because humans have a tendency of eating part of a meal and throwing it in the garbage. Oh, I don't like the flavor. I'm throwing it out. Or I make all of this stuff so I can have this gluttonous meal, and then instead of turning it over to the poor or the disadvantaged of their own society, they turn around and throw it out. Okay, the Elfydd race won't do that. Okay, on the plus side, they also won't terminate the physically and or mentally challenged just because they've got a hiccup. They are very, very attentive to that side of it. World, you do realize the Bigfoot's been around a lot longer than humans. And rest assured, they don't require human cast-offs. Okay. Although on occasion, they don't mind a human punching bag. No, that's wrong. They're actually not a violent race. Now, with this in mind, guys, it is hitting the 2-hour mark. So I'm going to say this. 2 major factors. Number one, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I really do appreciate it. Tomorrow will be an open topic. And tonight sometime I will post a bunch of post what's coming up. But again, if you didn't do so already, if you like the stream, do me a favor and give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel and then share the daylights out of it. And absolutely, until we talk again, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.